The world adopted a legally binding climate treaty in December 2015 to ensure the global rise in temperature remained below 2 degrees Celsius and preferably below 1.5 degrees, with pre-industrial era as the base year. The limit of 1.5 degrees rise in temperature is set to be breached this year. However, this breach will not be across the planet and will not be permanent. This breach will be triggered by an El Nino effect, a climate pattern during which the surface water of the eastern Pacific tropical ocean gets warmer than usual. This is part of a larger phenomenon known as El Nino Southern Oscillation or ENSO. This affects the Indian monsoon, as the warming of the ocean surface temperature weakens the trade winds responsible for bringing monsoon in India. So, El Nino has always been associated with weekend rainfall. Severe droughts in India have always been in El Nino years.
70% of the total precipitation that the country gets in a year is during this 4-month monsoon season. It's very crucial for the Kharif crop, which is sown during that time. Also for the succeeding Rabi crop, the Rabi crop which follows, because it helps in filling up the reservoirs, the irrigation potential goes up. Because Rabi is largely a period when the monsoons are not that much active. So it might happen that you might not get a very normal monsoon. The monsoon might be below normal, but the timeliness and the distribution and the spatiality, the spacing of the monsoon is very good. If that happens because of El Nino, it does not impact the agriculture production that much. But if El Nino causes this timeliness and the spread and the spatial distribution to go haywire, then it causes impact on the agriculture production. Means your crops will start withering. Then probably if it leads to very inordinate delay in onset of monsoon, then the time period for the crop to mature is very limited. It leads to low yield.
The dominant monsoon in India is the southwest monsoon, which affects 70% of all agriculture in the country. It usually stretches from the end of May to September. According to the Economic Survey of 2020-21, the share of the agricultural sector in total GDP was 20%. This sector, in turn, is largely dependent on regular monsoon. A strong El Nino may severely impact the agriculture sector and, by extension, the entire Indian economy.
Though our agriculture is now a very smaller portion of the overall GDP, but a very large population, almost 49% of your workforce is still dependent on agriculture. Though its contribution to GDP is very less than 17-18%, but the population which is dependent on farming is very vast. So that population and also the entire rural economy gets impacted if the monsoons are not up to the mark. And if they're not up to the mark in the rain-fed and the poorer states, it impacts the rural economy, it impacts the workforce, it leads to inflation, the food production can go down, and all this have an impact on inflation. And if inflation pushes up and economic growth does not come up, then it will have an impact on your overall economic of the country.
Climate models suggest that El Nino may appear around the second half of this year. Scientists have indicated that the frequency of adverse climate events has increased in the past few years. Events that would usually occur in 30 to 50 years now take place within 20 years. The same goes for El Nino. El Nino, by pattern, is irregular, occurring once every 3 to 7 years. However, its frequency has increased lately.
The El Ninos are nothing but the abnormal warming in the equatorial Pacific, which happens once in 5 to 7 years. So a warming is equatorial Pacific can affect Indian monsoon through we call so-called water circulation and many other climate features. Historical data shows that El Nino moderate to even severe El Nino can really pull down the agriculture, the monsoon rainfall. But as I told that all the El Ninos did not really lead to an Indian monsoon drought. And for example, 97 drought, El Nino, it was very severe El Nino. We did not have a drought. We had a normal monsoon. But it happened, but the frequency is much smaller. So, but when the El Nino develops, we should keep it in mind that there's a high probability that Indian monsoon can be on lower side of the normal. I will not call as a name as division or drought, but definitely it's on the lower side.
If this year's El Nino turns out to be severe, it is likely to have an extreme impact. Regions in North India such as Delhi, UP, Bihar and Jharkhand may experience drought, while regions of northern Maharashtra, Gujarat and Punjab may see floods. Overall, India will receive less rainfall. In such a scenario, is India prepared to mitigate this adversity?
These kind of abnormal events are more frequent abnormal events are likely to come in future with the global warming also is happening. So we need to be fully prepared in terms of adaptation to agriculture, adaptation to water resources, adaptation to power shortage could be there. If it's some places there's a lot of division, rainfall is happening. But I will tell you, the government is over the last many years have learned a lot of good lessons and they have fully prepared now. So, for example, 2002 drought, I remember, in spite of a very severe El Nino, Indian government has managed it. And that does not mean agriculture is not really affected. Agriculture is affected, but it did not peep into or drop into the people's problems. For example, there was no famine, there is no shortage of food, etc. And so Indian government is fully prepared. And nowadays, this kind of events, government can cope up.
Climate change has strengthened El Nino and its frequency. A scientific paper published in Nature Communications argued that there will be an increase in sea surface temperature in the eastern equatorial Pacific region, triggered by global warming. This increase, the paper said, would be observed decades earlier than expected, which, in turn, would exacerbate El Nino. While climate models have predicted a strong El Nino in 2023, the accuracy of the prediction can be ascertained only by March or April. Experts say there is no need to panic, but the country must be prepared for a weak monsoon. Over the years, the share of the agricultural sector in GDP has decreased, but a large workforce is still engaged in the sector. So, even if a severe El Nino will not impact the Indian economy significantly, it will affect the people involved in the sector. The increase in the frequency of adverse climatic events such as El Nino is the result of a rapid climate change. If the global temperature soars above 1.5 degrees Celsius, the effect will be catastrophic.
If you like this video, share it and subscribe to Business Standard. For more news, views and insights, log on to www.business-standard.com. Do also follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Telegram and LinkedIn.